Hello, this video is meant to demonstrate how to set up Ethernet communications with a Allen Bradley PLC, a 1734 AENT.IO distributed I/O setup for Allen Bradley, a Powerflex variable frequency drive with a 22 COMM Ethernet adapter, as well as we'll touch briefly on HMI communications. This is basically an overview on how to set up a closed Ethernet system network. It's probably best you have some understanding of how IP addresses and MAC addresses will work. I don't have time to really go into that. Long story short, you got to make sure IP addresses match based upon what the subnet mask says. So in this case, we're using IP addresses that are 10.136.95. We will be using a subnet mask of 255.255.248, which will allow me to communicate with anything with the IP address of 10.136.88.1 all the way up to 10.136.95.255. That's just the way we have to do things. So it gives us a large range of IP addresses. The problem with that is with a large range of IP addresses, network communication is a little bit slower, but in our classroom purposes, it's good enough for our purposes. This is the trainer that we have. This is the trainer that we have right here. Let me move forward. It looks like it's a fairly simple setup with the control logics. You can see the PLC connected by Ethernet. Here's a network switch. Here's the distributed I/O, the power view, our operator panel, and an HMI. And then an analog output and analog input. Everything is connected through the switch. How we set up communications is everything is ran by Ethernet to this switch here. And then what takes place is we then have to run a cord from our computer with the Ethernet connection to that switch. Or in our cases, more likely, we have to run another cord out of here to the wall. With the way we do things in our educational facility, we have to get our license codes from a centralized server. So this Ethernet computer needs to be connected to the wall, which is then connecting to the main school's Ethernet hub. In actual purposes, if I'm in industry, I could probably have a closed network where everything is on my own net. You may see something like 10.10.10 as a local I/O, or the standard 192.168.1.whatever. So these are both localized networks that you may see used, and as long as this computer here matches the first 3 digits or whatever based upon the subnet mask of your Ethernet communications, you should get communication setups. In our case, this is how our setup goes with our network switch. The only thing difference is we have our distributed I/O. Also, boom, 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 just my bad drawing. My distributed I/O, 1734, also connected to an Ethernet switch. And then the HMI. So connected by Ethernet. Okay, that's the only big difference. And so when you're setting up your closed network, you got to make sure that there is a cord going from the wall or from the computer, at least from the wall. You may not need this if everything's connected, but if you're not getting communication, it may be because one of this cord or this cord is not firmly placed inside the same switch. Okay, so be wary of that. Moving forward, we're going to talk about the Ethernet IO, or the point IO. Something that's important to note is when you get an Ethernet IO out of the box, what's on this thumb wheel right here is extremely important. If it usually comes out of the box saying 888, that means that that has been set up to get an IP address through BootTP. We'll talk about BootTP in a second, but the other thing that you can do is if you put this thumb wheel, and I'll get you a closer up look. You'll see two little buttons that you can push in that wheel it up or down. If this thumb wheel is between the numbers of 0 and 255, it will default to an IP address of 192.168. So 192.168.1 dot whatever is on the thumb wheel. So if it's so in some of our trainers it would be 002. The IP address for that would be 2. So be wary of that. Now I'll show you how to change this in a second through the web way, which is an easy way to do it if you don't want to mess with boot IP. But this is by wheeling up the thumb wheel that you can automatically set your IP address, cycle power, and that will disconnect any boot IP or DCHP setup. You can make sure it gets on a private network. But if you try to set the Ethernet address and this thumb wheel is still between 0 and 255, you're going to have issues and you're never going to be able to reset it. Another thing to note is on the side, and so right over here on this long thing down below, and plus I give you a way to write the IP address, so when you're in the field you can write it. But on the side down below, you will see something called the Ethernet address. This is the MAC address. This is for lack of a better word, the device's social security number. This is, if you're running a BootTP server, you may need to know this off your hardware. So I just want to point out that's where it is located. So let me show you really fast how to change that IP address. First things first, if you know it's 192.168.1 dot whatever because of thumb wheel, make sure your computer or your programming device has the same IP address and this same IP subnet, and this will work. But in this case, since it's the 493 whatever, I'm going to utilize the Ethernet IP communication setup. I'll do another lesson on breaking this down, but it will show me everything is out there, and here's my Ethernet address right here, 10.136.95.199. All right. Now, what I can do then is go up to any web browser. I'm running Google Chrome, here, and type in 110.136.95.199, and it will open the adapter's web page. I'll zoom in on that. So you can see for yourself. That's the same MAC address. It tells you what it is. It's giving you some connection statuses. You can also do some diagnostic overview I/O connections, see if things are working well, get internet statistics, network settings. So I can go in and say, oh, this is what the subnet mask is. This is the default gateway. I have this setup pointed to the PLC, but just so I can communicate through the PLC as well to the distributed I/O, but that's something that you would have set up for any closed network that you may see in industry. But if I want to configure something, I go into configurations over here on the side. So over here on the side over here. So configurations. And I click network. Oh shoot. Password. What is the password? Well, if you want to use some massive hacking skills, ADMIN admin with the password as lowercase password. So the password is this, just all lowercase. To log in, and boom, now it takes me away to change things. So now I can go in and change my IP address. So if I wanted to tweak this, I could. So if I go in here, hit 202, go down and hit apply changes, it says unable save network config. Oh, IO established connection. So I can't change it because there's already the PLC is already connected and online using it. So that's something to keep in mind. But that's how I would go about changing it. So if I didn't have an IO connection into that, I could change it by just hitting save changes, change it, cycle power, and it should work. Okay? So I won't change this out. I will close this out. Okay, so trash. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. But that's one way how to change the Ethernet, IP address on the point IO. The other device we have is an VFD, a Powerflex 40 VFD with a network communication module. Now, so in the field, some HMIs, you can actually do all the changing from the touchpad right here. It has a full numeric pad that you can enter in everything. If you know the parameters, you can do it. Ours, unfortunately, does not have that luxury. So we are forced to do things through BootTP. That's the only way that I've been able to find to change this, and that's the only way that the instruction manual says to change it. But let me show you what this looks like on the inside, because that will help you see what we're talking about. Well, first of all, these green lights here, they tell you something. If you go to the manual, the first port says that the module's operating properly. The second one saying that it's transferring I/O data. It'll be solid green if it's doing that. It'll be solid green if it's communicating on network. It's flashing green if it's not, if it's operating but not connected. So think of it: start at the top, work your way down. Solid is good, flashing is bad. If the last one's off, it means we're not transmitting data. So right now we're not transmitting data. So be aware of that. That's a good diagnostic tool. If I crack open the inside, this is what the HMI looks like on the inside when I take the cover off. There's two extension screw sets, and a novice programmer may think, well, this right here looks like a Ethernet port. I can just plug in. No, that is not set up to communicate via Ethernet IP. It is, I think, if my memory serves me correct, is DSI communication or Modbus, but I don't remember 100%. But these are the terminals to do direct. So if you don't have an Ethernet adapter, if you want to communicate with an HMI, these are the terminals you'll be using right here. If you consult the tech documents supplied with this, you can wire in each, and this little yellow wire is a jumper from a 24-volt COMM to the stop, so it can keep it going. So you can run it off the touchpad. But if we're going to do some communication, we're going to make sure that we have a similar I/O address. Okay, so if I then look at the card that I just pulled off, this is what it looks like. You see a ribbon cable connected to the VFD's card. But here is my Ethernet connection. It's going through here, not to the VFD. So I have to communicate first through this Ethernet card to the VFD, and this translates signals to the VFD. If I'm setting it up, I need to take this off because this computer chip contains everything I need to know to help set things up. I wish there's something on the outside of this, so I didn't have to take it off, but I can see why there's benefits of having this hidden. Because on this card is the hardware address, F454338. This is the MAC address. when I run a BootTP server, this is what I will need to utilize to program. So let me show you what this looks like. This is a BootTP server software. Now you need admin rights to run it, and you need to be able to be on a similar subnet. So if you're on a student computer, you might not be able to run this and may not be able to work right. So you might need to actually bring in your own laptop, but this is a free download. And you can see that whatever this MAC address is sending a signal out to a DHCP server, which is our local server, and asking for an IP address. This just means dynamic protocol. If I first plug in this communication port, it's going to say time it's trying to communicate with, BOOTP or BOOTP, and give me the MAC address, because it won't have an IP address assigned to it. What it's doing is calling out like a child and saying, help me, help me, help me, assign me a name, I feel lonely. And this BootTP server allows me to assign it a name. But I can also use it to change IP addresses. So if I go in here and hit new, so let me actually move this out of the way so we can see it together. If I hit new and type in F454338003B4, and if I consult RS links for the IP address, it's going to show up here. And I can then enable BootTP, and look, it says enable BootTP successful. I can disable it too, but right now it's got a static IP address. I should have picked one of the ones in the back that hadn't been changed yet. But all I have to do is type, find my get my MAC address, find it up here, and if I highlight it and right click new, it's through through the relation list. I can go in and I'll change that to 22, hit OK, and it'll say command successful, and let me, so I'll enable BootTP, attempting to connect, see if it will find it, but it's looking for it, but I didn't change it. It's not going to find it because I changed the IP address it's looking for. Because this hasn't already assigned IP address, it won't let me reassign it. But normally what you'll see is it would be up here. You would highlight your device, hit new, enter the MAC address, enter your new IP address, and it will assign it, but then you disable the BootTP DCPH. I think part of the issue is the next thing I'm going to talk about. Is something that you have the ability to do on the drive is be able to enable web position or disable web position. If you also change multi-operation or single operation, but this is something that you can actually enable a web page on your drive so you can monitor it. And in this case, here's the switch here. If you notice, it's on the on side, so I can tie into the IP the drive directly. So if I go up here and type in 1.1, I have communication now with the Powerflex. It can give me the status, everything else, and one nice thing, it can give me a direct ability to launch Drive Explorer, Drive Execute. This is how you can set up your drive. Whoops, let me launch it. And there is a software that Allen Bradley provides that allows you to change parameters and everything else online. You can access it through Studio, but it is a little convenient. So hold on a second. So when I clicked on the Launch Explorer, this thing opened up, and I can look at drive bus frequency fault codes. This is how you would set up things and look at parameters. In the 22 COMM setup, device parameters, you can see BootTP is disabled. I can enable it and hit save up here. I'm going to keep it disabled. But this already has the IP address set up with the internal values. I can also change it in here and do some auto detect stuff. I can also set up some of the changes. So the web enable, that's anything in blue is something you can't really change. So mode single drive, if I flip that other switch, it would be maximum drive. But I can also pull up the parameters of my drive. So the parameter list itself, here's everything. I can go in and some things I can't really tweak, some things I can. So, once again, some of the things in blue are stuff that you can't change. It's already there. But the important thing to know is when we start doing programming, external, I got to find it, start source. This is reading. It says communication port. If that is not the right parameter, if it's keypad, if it's the front, if it's 3-wire, 2-wire, level sets, this is the stuff that will cause you not to be able to program. If I'm using the PLC, I need to make sure that this parameter, 36, is COMM port. Your speed reference too. If I want to change the speed reference, I can do a preset frequency. I can use the drive pot, meaning the pot on the front, or set up some internal frequency, or I can have it set off of another external potentiometer or sensor of some type. I need it to be COMM port if I needed to do things. It's in here where I can change all the parameters and have my own special ramp up and all the other fun stuff. Okay. So if I want to change it, I hit save, and then that allows me to save it and everything. But you can see it's connected right now. I can make sure it all gets there. You can see down, by the way, you can see down here, changeable, run read-only, read-only, linked. The colors down there. So green is changeable. Right now, run read-only, and you can change all this in the program mode, but this is another thing that you can do to look at some settings without pretty easily without having to go deep down. I hope that this was helpful. I get that this is a lot, but this is meant for you to review multiple times. So don't, if it's too much, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to help. Thank you.